You ready, Mr. Chair? Yep.
Call to order. Do a roll call.
Stan,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Dr. T,
Here.
Devrin,
Here.
John.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. It's like our first order of business is the selection of a chair and a vice chair. Huh? We already did that.
Well, you have to do it every year after the election.
Excuse me.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to make a motion to whoever you would
Make
like.
a motion that John be the chairperson.
Is there a second? Great.
Did not make a
Right.
single mistake during his first term.
Yeah, one, okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye. All opposed? There are none. Okay,
And vice chair?
vice chair,
So, Dr. T,
I'll second that.
yeah, exactly.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And there are none. So Mark DeSillo is the vice chair. And has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes
So
from the April
moved.
27th meeting?
second.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye. And minutes are approved. Okay. Were there any amendments to the meeting agenda? Right, there are none. Are there persons to be heard related to the agenda? Sir?
Hey, good evening, committee members. I'm Brian Lynch. I live at 228 Midcoff Highway. I want to speak on 11B, discussion items. This has to do with basically is bicyclists riding the wrong direction, riding against traffic. And this area that have concerns about is as you're heading southwest, just before you get to the South Harbor parking lot, there's that corner, that curve. It's a blind curve. And you come around there, and at least twice I've come very close to hitting bicyclists that were riding in the wrong direction. I've talked to Pat at the bike shop about this. He has concerns. I've had comments from, other people. What absent more aggressive enforcement of that law, I would suggest that there be a no parking zone on the water side, of that corner, just to provide a little bit more room in there for anybody that's riding the wrong direction at that spot. I definitely don't want to hit anybody, and I definitely don't want to have a heart attack when I almost hit somebody. But I would like you to consider at least setting part of that corner down, wouldn't even have to be all the way to the South Harbor parking lot entrance, but to set that aside as a no parking zone on that one side, just to prevent potential accidents. And if there's an accident with a bicyclist, it's going to be very tragic. Anyway, they have here.
I guess I'm trying to visualize how far is the apex of that corner from the entrance to the South Harbor?
Ooh, good question.
Because I mean,
100
everybody
yards.
parks there and, they're for sale boats and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
probably, what would that be, 75 yards, something like that. So,
Where is this at? I mean, name me some houses I can connect to.
okay, it's right across from where Erica Warhatch lives. It's just down a little bit south and west of where you live, Stan. That corner right there.
in front of
We,
Johnny
where
Weekon's
Weekons, where
house?
Weekons, live there.
I don't, I think it's a speeding problem.
Um,
I think it's 30 or 35 tops going by my house. And I just seen a little Ford Ranger pickup either I think it was this morning or last night. They're going by my place 40, 45 miles an hour. And if you wanna really get to it, you got people coming in from Scow Bay now that they got their cell phone reception. They're driving by my place like this, then they're texting and they're on the cell phone. Zing into town. I think that's the real problem.
no, I can't really disagree with you, see that stuff all the time. But this one, it almost wouldn't matter if you were going 20. You know, you do a head on with a bicycle there, you're talking a closing speed of probably, 30 miles an hour at a minimum.
Isn't there
So-
a bus stop, by there too, right by that corner?
The school bus
The school
stops
bus
on that
stop right
corner.
in the corner.
But this definitely has been is a concern that I'm not alone in this. I'm the only one here, obviously, but I represent myself. But I think it's something that you at least put some thought into, consider it. You wouldn't, like I said, it wouldn't have to be a real long space there. It's just enough where if you come around the corner and somebody's riding the wrong direction, you're not doing a head to head right there.
So in your estimation, how many feet from the apex in each direction do you think needs to be no parking?
How do you get this thing to turn?
Yeah, I don't know how far that is. It's
Volume.
probably, I don't know, it's 100 yards or
The
not.
lift-
I would
I don't hear
guess,
him very well.
you'd
He's
probably
not
want to
talking.
have,
That
say
doesn't
around
help that
100
way.
feet, something
Pardon?
like
That does
that.
not help
Yeah.
that way. That's just for listening to you.
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that, how far, but just, far enough that you at least get around that corner before, before you're, in a situation where you might smack into somebody, you have a little bit of space there. I don't know. That definitely is something the subject of discussion.
And your observation is it's primarily on that water side?
Yeah, that's where it occurs. The other side, I haven't, ever really had a problem there. It's not a blind corner, you actually can see around there.
You said it was about 75 yards from the apex to South Harbor.
I don't know if you guys
Maybe a
have
little
a better
farther.
idea, how far that is. My guess it's probably about 100 yards. Yeah, it's quite a way.
Is it, chief?
Here's the Weekon house right here.
Right.
He's talking about this corner right here.
Right.
And
That's right a ways.
yeah, there, to the
Oh.
south, that's a long ways. That's-
Yeah, that's 200 yards.
Yeah.
probably.
So maybe
Okay.
100 feet, maybe 100 feet.
There's the apex right there.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah, something maybe half that distance
So,
in there,
I mean,
half or
basically it
even a
would be
little less.
Weekon, if you're talking the apex of the corner, it'd be Weekon property right there. Cause and then you're also, these people just have parking on the road, same as these. So, and
So-
then,
Yeah, so that's, I guess, the other consideration, look at that, is some people only have on-road parking that are on that side of the street.
Yeah, you wouldn't have on-road parking right there on that side. Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, they only have on-road parking, it looks like.
right here.
So if it's feasible, I'm all for it, but again, I don't want to tell somebody like you can't park in front of your house.
yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, I understand that part. Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of, we could make that an action
see
item,
100
go down
feet.
and look
You
at it.
finish and then I'll ask.
So this, your house is back.
You could
here.
probably even, have a
Weekon
no
is right
parking
here.
zone right on
So
the
he's
apex
from
there
here
would
all the way
that
to South
definitely be
Harbor,
approved.
200 yards.
Right.
That's a long distance.
Oh, I was thinking it was on the
Parts
right
from
side out.
either-
No.
From the apex in either direction on the water side?
Actually, it's mainly just as you're heading south or west, right in that, as you're heading toward the South Harbor parking lot. That's the only part that's really,
Go all the way to
that's really
South Harbor,
dangerous.
no
right
way.
As
there.
long as it's
In
not
my
taking
opinion,
somebody's
space.
Parking
only
space,
parking
yeah.
place away, yeah.
I think, looking at the map that the chief just gave us, it's about 200 yards to South Harbor. That's really asking too much.
Well, I wouldn't say you'd have to go all the way
Right.
down there, but you could actually probably, like I just mentioned, is just have a no parking spot right there, maybe right
About
at
100 feet.
the apex. Yeah, 100 feet in there. Yeah. That would probably be sufficient. Yeah.
think it's as long as it's nobody's like Dr. T was saying and the chief mentioned, as long as it's nobody's only parking spot. Unfortunately, on the water side, they don't have driveways, that's their parking spot, and we really can't take that away from them, but
Yeah.
if it isn't, I think 100 feet would be, I think that's sufficient to give you enough space so you don't clobber somebody.
No, I, agree with that. I think, I think anything would be an improvement, at least my opinion there.
So I would move that we make this an action item to actually get some more details
Yeah.
about how it's gonna affect the people that are on that side. And what our real distances are, because we're just saying hundred feet and from the apex, it may be just before the apex that makes this ideal and then go from there.
Can I just say, I guess, that this is for people to step up and talk about the action or the items that are on the agenda, and we have a separate discussion item for this stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we
Okay.
get down to the discussion,
Okay.
you can just ask
Okay, I
for it to be
withdraw
brought
my
back.
inappropriate.
It's all
motion.
good.
We're still on the learning curve of
Okay.
this.
It's all good.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Any other discussion on this? I didn't hear.
Unrelated, he wants.
Yeah,
to
he's gonna
under-
speak under unrelated, so you're
Okay.
good.
All right. Is there any more discussion on that? All right. Person to be heard on unrelated to agenda.
Yeah, good evening. Jim Stolpe here. Hey, one of the things brought to my attention, which I think the board should think about, is emergency exits in buildings that facilitate large amounts of people, such as a hotel. If you see the exit signs are up, but nothing on the floor to guide you out the door when the smoke covers the exit sign. So maybe something that you folks could come up with for a city ordinance saying, hey, you have to provide something down low on the floor that shows this is the exit or this is the way to the exit, just like on an airplane where they have the strip on the floor. It's just something that maybe we should think about doing that. I mean, this school would be a prime example. The exits are up high, but if the smoke is there, you can't see it. So maybe put little green strip arrows on the floor. Have a nice day.
Discussion on that?
Makes sense to me.
And I'm sure there's something that's, we don't have to probably reinvent the wheel on that. I'm sure there's like 100 different designs for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at if you brought that forward, maybe that would be a wake up call to a few people going, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
What businesses or buildings are you primarily concerned about?
Well, the hotels for one. I mean, if you walk into a hotel, you can see they do meet the requirement by having exit signs up high. But I've noticed a couple of hotels don't have anything down low. And the school is a prime example of exit signs up high, but nothing down low. So I think it's something, it probably wouldn't be that hard or that expensive for somebody to add that into their business budget. But it's something to think about.
Do you have any specific suggestions of something you know?
Negative. That's up to a business, however they want to proceed with their program.
So Jim, right now, the businesses in town and the public buildings, they're meeting state fire code with having the exits illuminated up high, but there's nothing that you know of that says there's gonna be something low. It's more of a suggestion because it makes common sense.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else to be heard on unrelated agenda items? And there are none. Staff reports, Police Department, Chief Kerr.
No.
Push the mic down.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll start off with giving you guys a staffing update. We currently have one dispatcher that is in training. We have another one that we are finishing up. Actually, we have two other ones that we're finishing up backgrounds on. And then we have 3 applications for one last dispatch position. So staffing levels are looking a whole lot better than what they were here recently. We just conducted police officer testing and our one open position. We gave a conditional job offer to Andrew Broshot with Sitka PD. He accepted the position. He's in the final stages of the process, so we're hoping to get him over sometime in November. So then we'll be fully staffed. Crossing my fingers on that one. One of the other things you'll see is I handed you guys out information. What we've been doing is we've been exploring and talking about internally and with a few other community partners about implementing having a canine program here. We're looking at possibly one dog, and we're looking at a dual purpose dog. So in a small community like this, a dual purpose dog could benefit us numerous ways. We recently had that search and rescue out by Olson's log dump, and a dual purpose dog would actually be able to track the person, of course, with a muzzle on, but we could have located that person instead of having people wander through the woods, stuff like that, trying to find them. Numerous things with the detection. I mean, we can use that for locating drugs on search warrants. We've talked to the school. The school would definitely be interested in having us go through the school. Talk with the Coast Guard. Captain Jensen said that he would be willing to give us a letter of support. Actually asked if we could send the canine and the handler out on some of their patrols. And that's all stuff that we could get funded. So it'd be funded. The officer's wages and all the travel stuff would actually be covered under HIDA. So we could actually get funding, and all the travel and everything would be covered with that. Well, the officer's wages and if there was travel associated with the dog. As far as the budget stuff on that, the initial expenditures, you guys, we have this played out on this preliminary budget. As far as the patrol vehicle, there's several options for that. That's why we left that open. I mean, we'd initially be looking at possibly a used vehicle, and the most recent one just went for what, 15? Or
Yeah, about $13,700 for I think it was a 2017 Tahoe with 105,000 miles on it. From down south, it was used on highways, so it's not like a park and run type vehicle that you see here, or just a.
It's coming from another agency?
yes, yeah, so
South Salem, actually in New York.
so it'd actually be fully upfitted is basically the direction we're going.
We're from in New York, chief.
South Salem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just one of there's on Gov Deals, we've been looking at the prices of them, and of course, there's a lot of junk that goes up for sale there, but we're just kind of looking through to see what decent vehicles would go for, and that's about what it was. As far as the budgetary, as the expenses on how to pay for this, what we're looking at is, I mean, with the lateral police officer, we're actually looking at saving a minimum of about $16,000 just in the training. So we'd be saving that out of our travel and training budget. We also wouldn't be sending dispatchers, since the academy is gonna start soon. We wouldn't be able to send them till the following year. So instead of rolling that money back into the regular budget, we're looking at possibly going with investing that money into this canine program, which would have enough money to cover it. And basically, the stuff that you have in front of you is the information we've gathered so far. And so basically what our hope was at this meeting was to get you guys thinking about it and send us questions. If you guys have questions, I'm sure you do, send us questions so that we can actually have a formal proposal for you guys at the next meeting is what we're looking at. And one of the big things to point out is this dog, of course, dual purpose, but one of the things we actually wanted it trained for was the detection of fentanyl, because that is so prevalent in this community right now that they're training the dogs on the detection of it. So I talked with Phil from the hospital. He would be in full support of it. And so there's several community partners we were looking at getting letters of support for this program because it will benefit this community in removing fentanyl and other drugs from this community. We've had some boat owners talk to us that where they get some of their crew members with bringing the pills on board. So, I mean, that's another thing we can do is talk to the boat owners, go to the harbor security, the harbor board and talk with them and offer that out to the to all the vessel owners like, hey, you guys have any questions about your crew? We can run the dog through your boat if you want. And so basically this is the first step in where we're at. And we're hoping to get questions and comments from you guys before the next meeting when we would have a proposal all put together. And if you guys support it, great. And if not, we'll go from there. Go ahead.
So having experienced extended periods of time, 24 hours a day being on, is there a single handler?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that person
There you
would
go.
be like
He's it.
theoretically available 24 hours a day? And is that gonna be their sole job, or are they going to be a patrol officer as well and have shifts that they're gonna be working?
So one of the things we could have done, we could have tried this through HIDA, but the problem with going through that is it would be attached to CCAD. They could take the dog wherever they wanted to, basically tell us what to do with it. And we didn't like that idea. We didn't like them to tell us what training we would have to go to or anything and or where our handler has to go and when he has to go. So basically we were looking at putting this with one of our patrol officers. And of course, the dog would go to that person's house. That's why we have kennel stuff. We have all this stuff that's worked into this budget for it because that officer would work their normal shift. And then if you look on the annual expenditures, we have kennel time and because you have to pay kennel time for handlers. And so with us being fully staffed, we're looking at having the handler conduct all their kennel time while they're working during shift coverage. So that it takes out that expense. And then the handler overtime stuff for the kennel time is you're only required a half an hour for a day. But I mean,
It's
we
insufficient.
did an hour because it's a lot of work. And I mean, if you go for a walk, how many people's walks last more than half an hour? Or brushing and caring for an animal, stuff like that. So the annual expenditures are what we're looking at every year after the fact. I mean, the lodging is the unknown because we would have to figure out that, and that's either hotels or whatever's available to us at the time.
Chief, with research, would you be going to the same vendor for research or would you be going to, I don't know. I don't know if the state has a program here where you could recertify the dog, or would you have to go back to this particular kennel to have the research?
So that's an excellent question. The state does have certification and they offer us to go to that. I mean, we would still like to take them up on their training, but we would definitely, if this gets approved, we would definitely go back to the Adler horse to get the annual certification. Because if we purchase a dog through them, do the annual certifications through them, there's a warranty through them, and if there's issues to help us correct it. And that's from my experience in canine programs with other agencies, you usually take the dog back to the place where you purchased it from for the annual certifications.
Now, I saw that they're certified through the state of California. Is their training program, would that be certified through the state of Alaska as well?
Yes, there's not a,
It's a national certification.
The national
And
certification?
it's, the certification is not as of yet required. But it's highly warranted. So the annual recert is good from Adler Horst anywhere in the country.
Were you guys thinking of a particular breed?
so. We're looking at
My
the-
limited experience is that there's, that departments are switching over from Shepherds to the Malinois or the Dutch, mostly because of health benefits.
That's exactly what we were thinking. We were actually talking about today, the shepherds and the health issues with our limited veterinarian service. That's the last thing we want.
I personally like Dobermans.
I've seen a few
I'm
of
just
those
kidding.
back in the day.
But I do have a couple serious questions.
Okay,
The first thing is the officer receive on-call pay in addition to this, or is this part of it? Because it would be my understanding that if he's the sole handler, he would be 24/7 on call. So is there additional compensation for that, or is that included in this?
so basically what we do right now is, I mean, everyone, when you're off, but if you get a phone call, you don't have to respond unless, I mean, that's something we would work out with the union. That's something we'd have to talk to the union about, whether or not they get on-call pay for the entire year or how that works.
Okay, and my second question is, I have exposure to this because we had a dual purpose dog, but my question is what is the dual purpose here? Obviously, drugs and narcotics and
Search and rescue.
Yeah, and we would look for an apprehension dog. But that would also, the tracking that those things are trained to do would actually help out with search and rescue as well.
okay, I saw something in here about cadaver and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
no, that's not, that's the, when it starts talking about the difference.
It's multiple options.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when they train a dog for the apprehension part, they're sent training for pursuit or track somebody down?
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, when the officer goes on vacation, because we're in a small community, where would the dog be kenneled? I'm saying if he goes away, I mean, most of the dogs, in my experience, they go with the handler, okay? Unless they're going on a vacation, like you're going to Disney, okay? We don't have any kenneling facilities here. So where would the dog be kenneled when the officer's, off island vacation?
So on stuff like that, that's why you normally have someone who's trained in the agitation of it and works with the handler. And so basically, the person that's most familiar and most comfortable with the dog would be
kenneled
the
with them.
one that would be assisting with that. part
And
of it.
then, to offset, that person would get the hour a day taking care of the dog, so the overtime that would be incurred for the care of the dog, that type of thing would be incurred by the person taking over for the handler on vacation. That
Yes,
person would
that's
get paid.
correct.
Okay.
Question on where would the dog be acceptable or not acceptable in a business on Main Street? But what I'm mostly concerned about, what about the post office?
So the post office, we dealt with this during COVID. That's federal stuff. So we're not going there unless they ask us, basically. We do work with the postal inspectors. So if the postal inspectors were here and they said, hey, can you guys run your dog through these packages? 100%, we would be willing to do that.
If you got a tip, not through the postal inspector, would you be able to get a hold of someone in the post office that would say, yeah, bring the officer up, the canine.
So we do that currently, but I can't tell you how we do that. I mean, but we do exactly what you just asked me about.
Okay, you
And
have.
we
a
have our
working
avenues.
relationship with the post office, so to speak, then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, you also said that most of this would be covered by the HIDA.
So the travel of the officer for use of it would be, as far as the annual expenditures. We're looking at covering those, but like the training. When I talked with Haida, and that's all stuff I wanna have for the final draft stuff, is what exactly they will cover on it. But the training, since we're gonna be using it for CCAD stuff, they, as far as my understanding, and I'll get this set in stone, is that they'll pay for the airfare, so all the travel and the wages for the handler and the dog. But like I said, that's something I'm gonna have in stone for when we do the proposal.
And obviously you've had interest in amongst the officers of who'd like to be a handler.
Yes. Yeah, I would just encourage you guys. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. I'm sure if you guys talk to other people, if you guys come up with questions or community members have questions for you guys, shoot me an email with the question, and if you guys have anything that you guys want in the proposal, make sure to include that. But we plan on having a full budget outline and all the letters of support and funding all proposed for the next meeting.
Yeah, and a full list of who you can provide mutual aid to around Southeast for it.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely CCAD right there, and that's all this. Okay, yeah, I'll get that for you, but several agencies. So,
All right, does anybody have any more questions of the chief or any more discussion that you want to bring out to the rest of us?
The vehicle, yeah, you know, so, if this all went through, you'd be shipping the vehicle by like car carrier to Bellingham and having it shipped over, we wouldn't have to send anybody to go get the vehicle and drive it across country. Just put it on a car carrier, bring it here after you guys inspected it. Or we can
well, I
drive it
mean,
back.
if it meant approval, I'm sure we could send either Mark to the East Coast and let you guys drive it back. I mean,
How about both of us?
if that was terms for approval, we could
In the last-
definitely do that.
In the last 2 years, I've driven across the United States 6 times. I know my way back and forth, so, yeah, I
But-
wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah, no, we would definitely price out the different options and find out what the most cost-effective option would be for something like that. And I mean, they come up for sale in California, they come up for sale all over the place. That was just where the latest one, that was actually a nice one that came up. And so we were watching that one to actually see what a nice outfitted functioning vehicle would actually cost. So that's how we were looking at that. And we do have another vehicle that's coming up here in for the next budget year for replacement. And so, I mean, that's an option too, is just outfitting it through the regular process of our vehicles as they come up, but so, yeah, that's just a second option.
Okay.
Yeah, my recent experience is it's pretty cheap, relatively cheap to ship a vehicle
Yeah,
from
it's about.
from
50.
Arizona to
Yeah.
Seattle and then Seattle to here.
Yeah, it's
So
like, I think. From
it's just not that
Florida,
expensive and
it
it's
was like
safer.
$1,500.
Yep.
From Minnesota to New Jersey.
It's relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just one of the options we're looking at, and I mean, our initial thought was a used already, just some agencies extra one that they're getting rid of.
That makes sense.
All right,
Okay.
so we pretty well discussed this one, and Chief will get back with each of us. I'll take opportunity to review this stuff, and if we have questions, we'll send you or talk to you about those questions concerning the K-9 program. It looks like a pretty good deal here, so.
Yeah, and
Um,
we'll have a policy when we go to propose it and everything, so that's,
Insurance.
All
You
right,
have to take insurance out for that.
yeah, that's something we gotta talk to
Yeah,
Susan
talking
Erickson
yeah,
about.
We're gonna need insurance.
you need insurance to blow your nose now,
That's
so.
all.
All right, are we ready to receive the report from the fire department? Are we ready to receive the fire? Okay.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'll start with membership and kind of work my way down through some other things I think you guys would be interested in. So currently, the department has 77 members in total. This includes 39 members of the fire branch, with 8 members having joined this year. 3 of those members are paid staff. The EMS hosts 8 EMT ones, 6 EMT twos, 10 ETTs, and 9 ambulance drivers. Of the above, currently, as of today, only 2 EMT ones and 3 ETTs are in town and able to respond regularly. And this excludes paid staff, of which only myself regularly responds to code reds or an instance in which the ambulance is inadequately staffed. The EMS coordinator also has responded to some calls within his area that he lives in out by Papke's, when he is able. EMS hosts a total of 33 members. Search and Rescue has 31 members, 15 of which are medically trained to a wilderness first responder or emergency trauma technician level, or higher. The membership data that I've been gathering over the past year over incoming members has shown that the overwhelming majority of our new members have come from folks moving from out of town into town. And a large majority of them have jobs that take them outside of town for some period out of the year. Which is why I have, about 30 or more members in each branch, but I don't always have 30 members to use for response. The new truck, engine 2, and the old truck, engine 5, we plan to press engine 2 into service as a second due unit until some additional kinks and warranty work gets worked out. And the volunteers get some more time training with it. Engine 5 has had its tank drained and is starting to be removed from service. We plan to have it completely out of service by the end of November, with engine 2 fully ready to go by then. The current plan for this engine is, for engine 5, is to sell it to the city of Hyder. That tentatively will need Steve's and the assembly's approval. The city of Hyder has just reestablished its fire department. For those of you who don't know where Hyder is, it's up Portland, I think it's Portland Canal, east of Ketchikan. And they currently have no apparatus to respond with. They'd be responsible for all shipping costs and essentially removing it from the island. Training currently, fire drills 3 times in a month. EMS drills twice in a month, and we're currently working with volunteers to increase that to 3 times in a month, just like fire, if they are so interested in it. Search and Rescue currently drills twice in a month. Additional training includes an ongoing perpetual ETT class through the Southeast Regional EMS Council. This is an online course. You can join anytime. As soon as you complete the online work through Josh, you do your skills check off, and then you're an ETT. We're going to have an EMT 2 course held in December, aimed at raising the most of our EMT 1s into an EMT 2 level to provide some ALS skills or advanced life support skills. And an EMT1 bridge from ETT possibly in January. Tentative dates for that are estimated to start January 7th, but that has not been officially pinned down yet. And then two of our EMS officers and one of my fire officers and myself just recently completed a methods of instruction course. This course is geared towards the development and implementation of lesson plans and teaching as far as, setting up a certification level class or something of that type. Josh is currently working on obtaining his AEMT cert. This would make him an advanced EMT and make him eligible to teach EMT2, EMT3, and AMT level courses to raise the skill level. We did the history of the skill level of the EMS department. You have ETTs at the bottom, emergency trauma technicians. Then you have your EMT1s. The state requires you to have a minimum of one EMT1 on board to run a certified ambulance service and advertise yourself as a ambulance service. Otherwise, you're just a transport service. Then you have EMT2, EMT3, AEMT, and then a paramedic. Most of the skills that we use in town are ETT, EMT1 level, with some need for EMT2 level skills. So that's probably as high as we bring most of our members. Other news, through the ARPA funding that the borough got, they granted 60,000 of that to the fire department for getting what's called a Stryker power load system. This is a system that loads the gurney in and out of the ambulance without need to lift the cot into the ambulance. The one on Medic 1 is entirely functional. Medic 2 will be functional soon. It just required some additional hardware from the Stryker company in order to make it work. These devices in general make patient loading safer and easier for both the patient and EMS personnel. As far as the CERT program is concerned, I've had 15 people reach out to me about the CERT program, and 3 of them have completed the online class portion. And we are working on rescheduling that program for sometime in late January. I'm waiting to hear back from the instructor who was hurt and had to postpone it. And then lastly, we had to cancel our junior firefighter program this year for lack of participation by the high school students. Anything to add? And that's the state of the union there. I figured we'd wait till they came up. There's some information handed out on membership data, calls for code reds. I can talk about them now if you want, or. Okay.
So there's no comment or questions on the report from the fire department. All right. On to unfinished business. Ravens Roost Crosswalk. Ask Chief Kerr to investigate the criteria for adding a crosswalk at Ravens Roost Trail location. Do you have any information on that?
So I wish I was here at the last meeting, but I was out of town. So basically on that proposal, it was sent to you guys, just wanting you guys to weigh in on whether or not you think it was a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea. If you guys want a crosswalk there, then it's up to, then I have to tell Chris, and then there's state regulations that mandate signage and everything. So that's all there. It's just if you guys want it or not. And then it will be followed through with the proper signage on the distances. Go ahead.
And we can do it without lights, right? I mean, we don't have we don't have to have electricity or lights blinking. It's just,
No.
it doesn't require any infrastructure.
No, we can
Okay.
just put in the, we
Right.
can just put in the signage and
Right.
we're good.
I'm good with that.
Where's this going? Right across from the parking lot for Sandy Beach?
So you have those, you have that really nice trailhead that they put in there at Sandy Beach, and you get the school, you get a bunch of other people that just walk across the street, and we have the dump hill traffic.
Right there
And
by
Frederick-
where that little parking lot is, right?
Yep. Yeah, so basically, we want to have a crosswalk put in there for safety reasons. The school uses it for cross-country stuff, and I mean, that thing's a well-used trail. And
Walk, all you gotta do is get a spray painting outfit and on a dry day and put it on the street.
yeah, but we want to do it the right way so that we're not held liable. And if we don't have a crosswalk there, I could,
Use it, they can't read.
well, maybe they know that the markings on the sidewalk mean for them to cross within it.
The signage would then also alert drivers, is that
Right.
Not
correct?
against the sign,
Yes.
don't get me wrong. But if you wanted to get one real quick, you'd go out there with a 2x6 and a spray outfit and put a crosswalk out there. You're
Yeah,
in a
but-
Hurry to get it.
What I'm trying to avoid is the borough getting sued. And so we're trying to make sure that we follow the regulations that
That's a
are,
good idea, and I've got a point that I'm gonna bring up about that
okay.
in a little bit.
So are we to the point where we can motion to endorse this at this point? Are we there now?
I don't think you even need to. You pretty much last meeting said, please investigate. Chief Kerr saying we're gonna move forward. You've already discussed it. I think we're good.
There you
Okay,
go.
so it is gonna get pushed forward as us endorsing it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, chief.
You disagree? Do you want them to take? a
No,
vote?
I
Okay.
mean, basically, I was asked to put it by my boss. I was asked to put it to them, have them vote on it. If they like the idea, then we'll move forward with it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and just do it, just to make it, just in case, so there's no questions.
Okay.
Okay. So a motion, go ahead.
I make a motion that we push this forward to endorse an official crosswalk there.
I second.
All right. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? And there are none, motion carries. Okay, looks like on April 27th, we also voted to give Chief Kerr another job. To pursue an evaluation on placing a parabolic mirror near the intersection of Hagen and Second Street. Have you any information for us on that?
Yeah, so that was in that packet also, and when I talked with the state, they said that we will not be putting anything in there right away. And that if the borough was to install anything, it'd have to be outside the right of way, and if people use it and get in accidents, then they say that they are not gonna be liable for any lawsuits and that the borough for implementing that will be responsible.
That's nonsensical, but I have sat at that intersection 5 times now, and actually, I have to say, I originally thought the traffic coming down the hill was the bigger problem, the way cars are parked. It's actually traffic coming up the hill, which is harder to see because the cars, there's a gap always at the other end of the downhill, so you can see the car coming, you know it's coming, but down the hill, and it's easy enough to get off the right of way and still have a mirror that will reflect that. So I still think, like I said, just sitting out there and watching what happens and trying to gauge where things are, I think at least one mirror is a reasonable thing at that intersection.
Chief, did you contact the city attorney on this to see if there was additional liability that we're not taking into consideration when we discuss this?
No, I just talked to the state.
We used to have a mirror on the corner right there, right on the
That's what I
power
was gonna
building.
Talk about, right on the corner of the city building, and I've been bitching about that for years and nobody's done anything about it. And when you're coming down the hill on the corner of the city building out here, if you got that mirror, you can see the traffic way back over here, and it will speed up traffic safely.
Well, I don't think that's the only place we could do one. I don't remember.
And it would be sitting on the corner of the building and the state wouldn't have to say anything about it.
Yeah. Like I
And
said,
nobody's done anything for however long I've been on the board here.
trying to do something, Stan.
Thank you.
Okay. So like I said, that may be a secondary thing, but I still think, the whole idea of somebody using a mirror, not using a mirror, that's like saying you don't look both ways when you cross the street. But I think at least one mirror, if the city can find a way to put it in that setback, it would benefit traffic coming out of Second Street. Or is it Second Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. But again, I have no qualms with putting that mirror back down there on the corner of Haugen and Front Street either.
I didn't realize you'd been here that long since we had that mirror on the corner.
He's been here forever.
No, he's been here forever.
So that's,
So if you guys want, I can talk to the borough attorney
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that there's any added liability with that. It's just, it's another tool to use. And it can be on our right of, or our property, not the right of way for the city or for the state, and still be functional.
Or maybe even ask the state if they can help come up with an alternative solution.
All right, is there any more discussion on the parabolic mirror? I guess not. All right. On to new business. Board member Hort requests a drop-off zone to be added to the curb in front of, Petersburg Rexall. We have any discussion on that?
Well, I'm requesting through the people that I've spoken with, elderly that may be wanting just to get into the drugstore to get a prescription, and a certain other person that was in the care business of taking care of not necessarily elderly, but disabled people, put that to me.
So is there's no time restriction on that curb right now, right?
No.
Okay. I don't know, do we have like a color that's 20-minute parking or something like that? So you can go in, stand in line, get your stuff and then move along?
We don't have anything.
But I
like
mean,
that.
is there such a designation in Alaska? Like a
believe
red
it's-
or blue? I don't know.
It's like handicap parking.
Well, it's 20-minute parking
Right.
versus park forever.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if there is such a thing in Alaska. I know in New Jersey, it's like light blue or
Yep.
something like that.
Light blue here is, just a, handicap.
But that's what it was suggested to me,
Yeah,
that
why
not that they can park there all day, but you'd be lucky if you had to get a prescription and there was more than 2 or 3 people ahead of you, you'd be lucky to get in and out in 15 minutes.
Well, I'm saying
probably.
20-minute parking, I
Yeah,
think is not
yeah.
unreasonable.
Did anyone check with Public Works to see if there was some sort of a standard designation for such a area?
I guess the other thing, you're there, so how would that affect you?
Well, it'll only affect me for a few more weeks. Cause I'm moving, but,
But
I really do think that. I really do think that from where that yellow zone is, it would be a good idea to put a white parking zone or just like a 5 or 10-minute parking zone from, the end of that yellow line forward a ways or forward just a car length. Cause we do see people pull into that yellow area, all day, every day to run into the drugstore or run into Papa Bear's or even my shop. Just real briefly, I don't think that putting a parking place right in front of Rexall would be the way to do it, just because of the troubles with parking. But going right on that corner would be real popular. PIA pulls their bus in right in that area too, to pick up people, several times a day. So, yeah, I think that would be a pretty good solution for that issue, and I don't think that it would affect parking downtown too much.
So, but like I said, the question is there such a thing as 20-minute parking in Alaska? I mean, some kind of curb identifier.
So I don't see that. It says that signage can be added for designating a parking area.
Okay,
There you go.
all right.
But I mean, so my problem would be is then you're expecting those people to parallel park, and that might be a problem. I mean, if we put maybe at the from the crosswalk there to that short little section there at the beginning of that.
That's what you're
That's
saying,
what
right?
he, that's
Yeah.
what she
That's
said.
what, that's what
That's
we're
what he's
talking about.
saying,
That's what
yeah.
we're talking about. So you don't have that problem, chief.
I mean,
He
maybe
drive up-
just make it a handicap spot, because if you don't want someone, I mean, I don't need to be using something like that, and, I mean, obviously, we don't need to be using that, but I mean, if someone's handicapped, I mean, I think that's probably a great.
There's
if they have a-
handicap parking right at the corner on the other side of that street though. Or right around the corner. I mean, I think the temporary parking would be great. Enforcement would be,
Yeah, because you're gonna have temporary parking for any of the businesses right there, so you're almost better just leaving the handicap parking where it is and just.
So I'd like to make a motion that we push forward a recommendation for a 20-minute parking zone from the corner yellow line forward to,
car length, whatever that is.
20 feet.
Yeah.
well, I figured we go from the corner all the way like in front of the drugstore or something. So everybody was there for, all of that was 20-minute parking.
That's pretty long.
But is that a bad idea to have 20-minute parking on that side of the street?
Kind of.
It
I
could
think
be.
it is.
It could be
Yeah,
based on
yeah.
whatever business.
No, I think what Devin said, 20, one car length, 20 feet, which is pickup truck size in this town. One car length, this pickup truck, 20 feet, 20-minute parking.
Okay, so that's my motion.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
Okay.
All right, is there any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
No, he was gonna,
Oh,
were you gonna say something?
Yeah, yeah, my whole thing, I don't know how the heck we're gonna enforce that, because if it's 20 minutes of parking, I mean, that could be 20 minutes in the hardware store, that could be 20 minutes anywhere. And I mean, anyone down there, most of those vehicles aren't there 20 minutes. I mean, I honestly, with the limited parking we have available, I mean, doesn't Rexall have like a drop-off program and stuff like that that they use? And most orders are called in the first place. So I think honestly, I think we're creating more problems and more issues by implementing something like that. I mean, we do have, Devon did point out, I forgot about the handicap parking right there on the side there. So, I mean, that's most of the time available from what I've seen when I drive over there. I mean, it is choked off that little street section, but I mean, 20-minute parking, that's basically what all downtown is. I mean, most cars don't sit there all day.
and the hard part would be timing it.
Timing it, enforcing, I honestly think we're creating more. I do like the idea, but I would encourage anyone that's having problems with the pharmacy, utilize their call-in and drop-off programs if they're having a hard time getting in and out of there.
I mean, whether it's enforceable or not, for whatever reason, I still think I'd like to see a 20-minute, just say, get in, get out. Don't just park here and then go wander off down to the harbor or whatever. So I'm gonna keep my motion as it is.
I, based on my training and experience and that timing would be a nightmare. And it would be difficult to do, and I'm not sure it would be easy to enforce.
We don't have the meter maid chalking your tires.
You have to
here.
chalk the tires, you have to do something, you have to watch where their valve stems are.
Right.
I think
And-
it just raises awareness so people know, like, just don't park there. I'm not worried about them getting a ticket for it. I'm more like, hey, this is a prime spot. I'm gonna come, take care of my business and go. The enforcement or, repercussions for not following the rules is totally separate. I think if you tell most people, get in and get out, they will.
Would a handicap zone from that in that same area be a better solution to that and more enforceable?
Well, to find a handicapped person going into the post office, I mean, most people don't have a handicap sticker who are like Stan is talking about, are slow and don't want to have to walk a long ways. So if you have to have a sticker to be handicapped, then I'd say no.
How tough is it to get a handicap sticker in the state of Alaska?
Ask him, he knows.
Doctor physician.
That's it?
That's the only thing.
You guys all got it, you know.
That one yet.
So it's, you can't walk 200 feet without a brace. You get short of breath. It's basically, you know, you can't go very far without assistance or taking breaks. That's the criteria for it.
Pretty broad. Um, we have a question or a comment?
So would it be feasible to just move the handicap parking zone around the corner and then just get rid of that handicap zone over there and then
Put
those,
in front of, put in front of the drugstore.
there you go.
Dennis is gonna squawk.
But I guess the question is, do you have to be handicapped to benefit from a shorter walk from your car to the pharmacy? I mean, technically disabled. I mean, that's my concern is there's lots of people who would benefit from that who aren't number one gonna say, yes, I need a handicap sticker. And so if you're looking at enforcement and you're parked in handicap and you don't have one of those little blue things, you know, then you know, what do? You stand there, you wait till they come out and see if they've got a cane or whatever. I just think when you actually designate it as handicap number one, some people will be like, well, I'm not handicapped, I'm not gonna park there. And maybe they're the people that would benefit, so. So it's just the opposite of the other thing of like, you know, you're obligated to nail somebody if they're not technically disabled.
You're right. More discussion on,
I would just like to see a really short-term parking area right in that area, that right in the location we're discussing. At least to try it out, put a sign up, see if people will
If it don't work,
do it,
yeah, no,
take the sign down.
Take those signs out. repaint
There are
them
people that
across
come
the
up and they
wall.
camp on that lot, on that parking spot all day long.
okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Would you restate your motion, please? Cause I'm a little confused.
That we are gonna put a short-term parking designation in the first part of that block in front of that side of Nordic or Front Street or whatever the. thing is.
Right past the yellow curve, 20 feet forward.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? And there are none, so the motion carries to recommend a 20-minute parking in that location. All right, EMS staffing, board member Testoni requests discussion regarding staffing of our emergency medical services division.
I'd have to agree with a lot of what you guys have written down. With EMS. In talking to you guys, talking to Jim, talking to Aaron, Josh and Ryan over the past year. I feel the same way you do. I think we're at a crossroads that we didn't think we were gonna be at for a long time. We're not getting the volunteers. And the needs of the town are growing. And I think we have talked about it, last year about maybe a 3 to 5 year window of getting, you know, going to a paid, EMS, not fire, but EMS. Personally, after seeing what you guys have written down and talking to you guys and talking to the people in town, I think that crossroads has gotten a lot shorter. I think we gotta start thinking about it now. I would like to see if we could get some of the kids at the high school to volunteer, if it was to go to paid, and look at it as a job opportunity to keep it in town so that they could go from volunteer status, see that it's a career, you know, and helping out here in town. I looked at some, in reading this, I saw some of the staffing. I thought it would you guys got 12, but that's including you, Josh, and Ryan, correct? So it'd be, 9 more people. I thought 6 would have done it, scheduling wise, but you might be, better with 12 when you consider days off, training, that type of thing.
Some of what
I
we,
see a huge benefit, for this. I don't know how everybody else thinks, but, you're just getting more calls. There's more of the code reds. Is that what you call them, right, Aaron? I think with, I don't know, and you could help me out in this, Deb, how close we are to acquiring, Pappy's Landing from the state. I don't know, I stay out of this, but I'm just wondering if that it was to, become a reality. I'm just saying, I think we're gonna have to be stretching out and like Aaron said, in this, it's hard pressed. We've had 2 incidences at not my house, my neighbor's house in a month. One, we were lucky that my wife was home. She's a nurse, and we were lucky on that one. And actually, we were lucky on both of them, that we were both home. And Josh did come out for one of them, and we had somebody else come out that way. But the code reds are getting very serious in town, and I think it's gotta be addressed. I know people don't like hearing about hiring more people and adding them to the payroll. But I think there is a responsibility that the borough has to serving everybody. Especially where we don't have private ambulance service here in town. And in reading your short, there is no way that AMR is gonna put somebody here. Nobody, there's no way. And the cost of AMR to have somebody here, you'd be talking probably close to $85,000 a person. Not including where they're gonna set their, where they're gonna have the EMs, because it wouldn't be at the fire station. And they're gonna want more than an additional 9 people. But that's, like I said, over the past year, I've been really keeping track on this, and I just think it's time that the borough's gonna have to seriously think about adding paid members to the fire department. As far as EMS goes, we can still stay the volunteer fire department. I don't see a problem with fires, but with the EMS side, I definitely see it's an issue, and I think it's gonna be addressed.
Aaron, do you have some comment on that?
sure. So, as he said, code reds have been an increasing problem. We tend to do better in the winter and early spring. Most of our members in back, usually anyone who has a job that takes them out of town is here, they're home. Lower levels of calls. You'll see in February of this year, there was a higher percentage of code red calls during the day. Part of that was I was out of town for 3 weeks for training, so we only had 1 paid member on shift during the day, so that was an increase. But if you look at the top of the lengthwise sheet there, they kind of, Josh was kind enough to help break it down. And these are all in minutes, but our staff day shifts, it takes 5.6 minutes from the time that the tone goes out to the time that we are on scene, hands on the patient, providing care. It takes, roughly 5.5 minutes. If we're short 1 person, that time now increases to almost 10 minutes. At night, if you do have volunteers on shift, meaning there's 2 EMTs assigned to the ambulance, and there is, at least one of them is an EMT, so you meet all the requirements to run. It's again about 10 minutes from the time the tone goes out to hands on patient. And then if there's no one on, it's a minimum of, 12 minutes before hands get on a patient. And sometimes it's much longer. And those are the times that I'm concerned with, because there are some instances where it's about 20 minutes before a patient receives care from the time that they call. That might be something that goes on in a larger city where they have to run a much longer distance, but to here that's unacceptable. amount of time between the time you get care for someone in service area one when you call. We did break it down, you know, so you can kind of see the calls, through the months and the percentage and the averages. Josh did his best to break it down. The second sheet, the one that's face up, he thought it might be beneficial to add information on there as to what type of day. Our analysis of our calls is it's at random. There's no like definitive, we get more calls on a Sunday or Wednesday or day or night. It's pretty evenly spread out. But you can look at it, you can see you know, how many calls we get, you know, throughout the day of the week per month. And right now we're sitting at about 213 calls, and we still got, you know, 2 more months to go, so.
Are you considering are you considering going to the assembly to try to get additional staffing? And if so, what's the number you're looking at?
So when we came up with that 8 to 12 model, sat down with my paid staff and we talked over, if we are gonna hire paid staff, it would be for not just an EMTs, it would be for fire as well. There's no reason to, you know, usually they go hand in hand. You can hire just EMS staff, but then they're just sitting around waiting for an EMS call. We still hope that the volunteers are still continue to respond and get, you know, continue to build members. But at least as far as EMS is concerned, we're just not seeing it, and it doesn't make sense just to hire a, you know, couple people to take, you know, a night shift. It would, the accountability of not having a supervisor attached to that as well. I mean, by the time you start trying to hire a supervisor to fill in, make sure that the people are going and everything's running as it should at night. By the time you hire that many people, you're probably about 5, 6 people already. You might as well go for the full 8 and get the full 24/7 coverage of having paid staff. But before we get to that, and out of my proposals, and the reason I put it first on the list is to see about paying the volunteers first. It's not a guarantee that we will see an increased response, but if all the other options I'm seeing available to the borough at this time, I see it as the cheapest. I think when I priced it out, of course, I didn't have time to run the numbers again before this meeting, but I was looking at anywhere from 10 to 15,000 a year based on our last year's call volume. If you were paying out, you know, $20 a call, I mean, that's a lot cheaper than paying for even just one extra paid member. So
Is there any recommendation that you would make to us that we
I-
might?
I
move
would try
forward?
that one first and, you know, give it a year. See if you do see that increase of, you know, participation from the community. Think back to my report and where a lot of our new members that are signing on are people that come from out of town. For some reason, we're not capturing the people that are in town, whether they are unable or unwilling. Folks who have grown up and lived here long-term, if they're not already volunteering for the fire department, they're not interested or they got other things going on. So our only new recruitment is coming from people we're bringing in from out of town. So maybe providing that additional incentive gives them what they need to think about responding. It's not quite, doesn't meet my definition of volunteering at that point, but it's a low hanging fruit that you can try, and you can always rescind it and go back to advocating for paid staff after. If
Eric.
that makes sense.
Aaron, I can see it maybe during the winter time, but in the summertime when everybody's doing what they do around here and we're really short-staffed, that plus the fact that you'd have to have at least one EMT, correct? For every time you had a call. Do we have enough volunteers to handle that, to cover the EMT portion of the call? And again, if most of those guys are, you know, fishing, it really doesn't help us in the summertime. It doesn't help us in the busy months here.
And that's true. I'm hoping with this new batch of drivers coming through in these ETTs, once they get through this, our program. The idea is the driver program is to create an entrance, get them used to responding, get them up to ETT, get them up to EMT1. And possibly higher if we can get them. I would hope we have additional personnel at that time, but I mean, I'd give it a year and see what happens. Is my recommendation versus going straight to paid staff.
Do you know of any department now that uses this model successfully?
I do know that South Tongass in particular, we have a member who served there prior and he has spoke to me at length about it. They use a paid call model. I have not had the opportunity to actually speak to them yet. I only drafted these proposals in response to what I was seeing on the agenda and where I thought this conversation was going.
South Tongass,
Catch can.
yeah, is it a bigger department? Is it a bigger volunteer department than we have here?
Yes. Yes.
I'm not, I know they cover a lot more area, but
I mean, I know there's more people in Ketchikan, so
Mhm.
that's my question. I mean, do they have the resources available to them that we don't have here as far as manpower goes? They should.
so they also have the benefit of I believe there's 3 departments there. There's Catch Can, there's North Tongass and South Tongass. And so they also have the benefit of mutual aid, whereas
We don't have that here.
we're the only game in
Right.
town. So.
Okay.
I think this mixed paid volunteer or earn a little when you're volunteering is pretty commonplace in the rest of the US. I definitely think that it might provide that little bit of extra motivation for people to sign up. I don't know if a year is long enough to give it a test, as I don't see it as quite the doom and gloom yet, is what it sounds like you guys are talking, but yeah, lots of code reds. It sucks. I think that putting a plan together to try providing a little bit of money to the current volunteers and try to entice people in would go a long ways.
Shitting.
I think that maybe Aaron should put some more numbers together and average hours for the last handful of years, average what it might cost at $20 or $25 per call. And make sure that you list how many hours go into each of those on calls too. Cause I know from experience, a fire call can last for 5 minutes or it can last for 12 hours or more. An EMS call is real common, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And put some numbers together and I mean, I think now is not a bad time to start getting that together for everyone. I think we're a ways away from needing paid staff yet.
They would get paid from the minute they the minute they hit the fire department?
I think it's
Or
I
would
think
they-
it's just stipend here. You showed up.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's not-
it's not-
paid on call and the program we were discussing is that's would have to actually sign up for a shift, a 12-hour shift. And then if they had a call and they went out and they responded to that call, they would get that stipend. If there was a call for assistance and additional personnel showed up, they get $10 versus 25 because they didn't take the full shift. And it would only be eligible to those who were actually medically trained. So as an example, my drivers would not be eligible for this.
right.
We want people that can actually provide care to the patient, at least on some level.
But it would be per run, right? So if there were 3
Per
runs,
run.
they'd get paid 3 times.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I really am not familiar with that model, but if that works, that's great.
Yeah, if that works.
We were just talking about the incentive things, for training, so.
So maybe you could put together something. I'm kind of a visual person and you guys are kind of dancing around with this and I personally would like to see some numbers and how that fleshes out. I'm not antagonistic towards it. I just, in my
Oh, no,
mind right now, I'm having a hard time following all of this.
and I meant this as these are things that we have been kicking around in the past couple months. You know, obviously none of this is fleshed out in hard detail.
Okay.
But having this from you guys gives us a direction, say, okay, we think this is the direction we want to go. So obviously I need to talk with the volunteers as well, more on a department level instead of an individual level, and make sure this is something that they would go for as well. But
And I think when you come up with some information, I think the thing that's gonna make the biggest splash is 8 paid people versus stipend. And like, people are gonna like, oh, stipend costs this. Well, if we go to an all paid staff, this is what it costs. And then you got insurance and just, all that kind of stuff go along with it too, so.
I did put something together last year, based on a $25 an hour, pay rate for, paid staff. That was severely lowballing the industry from what I
Right.
have looked into it. That's almost a non-offer. Fairbanks, has pretty good pay rate and they're constantly getting people, stolen from them, and they go down to Seattle or these larger cities where they get not just a higher, per hour rate, but also a large signing bonus as well. So if you did go that route and you were actually being serious about it, you would be putting some serious wages behind it to try and entice people to come here as well.
Okay, so you're willing to flesh something out for us for a future meeting? All right, that sounds good to me. Any other discussion? Okay. We're on to the next medical dispatcher training. Board member Tassolo requests discussion regarding dispatcher training for medical incidents.
Right, I don't know how many people listen to the scanner, but the dispatchers sometimes will report out person with a medical issue. Really doesn't help the volunteers going out the door, and I suspect the person on the other end of the phone is not getting a lot of like interim information, like here's what you should be doing. We've talked about getting people trained in medical dispatch for like decades now, and I would, if we're looking at, using resources, I think if we have dispatchers that are trained and gonna stay and, gonna be part of this system long-term, I'd like to see medical dispatch get put back in there, get that training done.
So that was actually a topic about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And so with this current group that we've got, I think we have a strong team that is hopefully gonna stay for a while. So that's a avenue that we're definitely going to be going down. I thought at some point you offered to do some training, or
I
Was
don't
that
remember
some-
that I did, but I always will.
I thought there was something with dispatch and emergency medical or something like that that you were talking about. This was like 3 years ago or something.
Like I said, I don't remember, but I am always willing to do training, so.
Okay, is that something you can do, or is that something where I just have them go through a class? So that's what,
I mean, there
Would
is,
you
there is
prefer the
technic-
class?
there is technically a class.
Yep.
I have never participated in the class, so I don't know what it entails.
okay,
So I will not say that I'm qualified to teach dispatchers. But any way I can help, I will.
so we actually aren't able to send some of them to the academy this year, so the money we save from that, we can actually invest into the dispatchers for that actual training and get the cards and flip cards and all that stuff that goes along with it.
Good, great, okay.
So, yeah, no, they would be really excited to get that done. So that's something we'll definitely do.
Looking
Yeah,
for
there's
is,
good,
E
there's
and
definitely
D
classes down south.
is
That's
emergency
probably-
medical dispatch.
All right.
I can't help but think that sometimes if there was a scheduled joint drill between EMS or even EMS fire and dispatch, that could go a long ways into, setting some basic information into dispatch as to what fire and EMS is needed. I just want to throw that out there. I think just some basic joint drills would really help out.
This year, the airport drill?
It'll be coming up in, we're gonna start talking about April.
Okay, so that's almost like we're rolling into getting ready for that thing, so. Because there's a lot of traffic, back and forth once we start doing that. And then this is, or the D is now redundant.
Okay.
We've already talked about that.
Okay. Communications, I'm unclear as what that is.
Did anybody receive any communications?
No.
Okay.
And discussion items. Traffic direction on Chief John Lott Street. Board Member Tassilo requested discussion regarding the direction of traffic on Chief John Lott Street.
Yeah, the person who asked me to bring this up is not here. But basically her concern was that the way the traffic goes now, if you come up Chief John Lott, you're kind of tied into going all the way out to the end of Middle Harbor and everything. And some consideration if it would improve traffic patterns to change the John Lott direction going towards the harbor versus towards Singley Alley. Just so people don't have to like go all the way down and over the bridge and all that stuff. That is as much as I got because I thought she was gonna be here to talk about it.
Okay. Well, maybe we save that for another
Yeah.
meeting and so we get
Yeah.
a little bit more
Okay.
information from what they want. Okay, South Nordic Drive vehicle parking, resident Brian Lynch shared the concern regarding vehicles parking in high traffic. We discussed that.
Well, for that one, so those locations that you're talking about are state, aren't they? That's a state road. So it would be the state that would be the ones to try to come up
Yes,
with a
that's correct.
solution for that. I think maybe we can maybe throw some ideas at them and see what they're willing to do. But I think you're right in that area right by Wecon's place, that curve where people do park, maybe could be a yellow zone for a short section. Until people are around with visibility or, cars come around and do have visibility, but I'm not sure what we can really do. Ask the chief to talk to the state about that one too.
So basically, yeah, I mean, we don't have any control over what they say. I mean, the Second Street or the Mir, that's a perfect example. They do what they want. As far as we tried to get the parking pushed back, all this stuff, and that's a perfect example of how they operate. It's frustrating, so, I mean, we can always, if you guys were to vote on it or, then we could say, send it to the state and be like, hey, our Public Safety Advisory Board says this. Maybe, I mean, I guess it would have to be that, it's just a discussion item, so. I mean, I can talk to the state and see what they're willing to do.
That would be great if you could mention what the issue is and if they're open for any communication discussion over it. Both these issues.
Okay.
Well, I guess the number one thing is, are you the department that should be doing this, or is it Public Works? I mean, I guess that's the question is, who's the appropriate entity to talk to the state about signage and parking and all that kind of stuff? Is that you?
I can do it.
Huh?
I can do it.
It seems to me that it's a safety issue at this point. Maybe Chief Kerr should evaluate the safety issue, discuss something with the state, bring what he's learned back to you guys. And then at that point, maybe you would like to suggest that Public Works do, or I don't know if Public Works even can since it's a state road, but yeah.
I say we're giving you all these jobs and maybe it's you're not the right person, but if, have at it.
No, it's,
All right, so you'll check with ADOT on, see what's possible or?
yeah, what they're willing to do or, yes.
Okay, all right. Scene safety for EMS with law enforcement involvement. Board Member Tassilo requests discussion on this.
Yeah, so we've had two incidences of basically, one was a knife, one was a gun. And it was brought forward to me that there is some concern that the scene, which was attended by an officer first, may have not actually been cleared well. And the gunshot wound, I guess, was the latest one where I guess they were only in the house for, less than a minute and came back out and waved EMS in. I don't know that you can clear a house in less than a minute. That's just, I'm just bringing that forward as a department concern. I don't know what your protocol is for a gunshot wound. I don't know how many officers are supposed to respond. But again, one was in a house and I don't know that like I said, they didn't feel like the house could have been physically cleared by one officer in that amount of time.
So
Was it treated as a crime scene?
that, it depends upon the situation and that's something that we should talk about in private.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
not at
Okay.
one of these meetings,
Okay.
Okay.
so.
All right. Patient information from pre-hospital calls. Board member Tassilo requests this discussion.
Yeah, this also goes back to the medical dispatch and, pushing information up to the hospital, in real time. Especially ideally the EMTs pick up the phone and they call as they get a break or they're on the way to the hospital, but with all these code reds, they're kind of hamstrung with, hands-on things. And so I'd like to revisit the idea that the dispatchers, when possible, can kind of update the hospital as to what's coming because we're not in that secure loop anymore.
You guys don't have that printout that it prints out
I don't know that we've gotten a printout in forever.
I think.
That's
they-
I thought last time they checked, I think it was an issue on the hospital side.
Think they are still getting that, they call it the rip and run, I think is what you're referring to, where that prints
they call
out status. Based on, what we log through the, CAD system. All that does is say we're en route, and as far as I know, it doesn't
Right.
actually give any descriptive, hey, the person's coding, the person's perfectly fine, the person is emergent or anything like that. I still think that, call coming from, us, EMS, or if we're unable, sometimes we ask the, officer on scene if there is one
Right.
to do it on our behalf. Is probably the more appropriate. I could see it being difficult for dispatch to, someone still has to contact them and tell them this is what's going on with the patient and this is the condition that they're in before they can relay it anyway. And if you were going to call dispatch to do that, it's easier just to call the hospital and cut out the middleman.
How we get the information is not
But
really.
We will
Yeah.
continue to make it to push for our members to make sure that they get that report. Some of the problem is sometimes these calls are happening right next door. And by the time you load up the patient, you get that free second, you're down the road and you're pulling up to the ER before you have an opportunity. But we will continue to make it a priority.
But I don't ever want communication to supersede patient care.
Right.
So is some of the dispatcher training gonna help with this?
I hope so.
Sure.
Well, so, no, it won't. I don't see it helping with that. The reason being is because what they're talking about is actually physically making the phone call to the hospital. And so I don't see that helping the training that that the dispatchers are receiving. I don't see that helping the actual contact at the hospital level because the dispatchers, when they get a free second, because they're normally on the phone and until they get there, then they get off the phone. But if they're having to do multiple things, sometimes they don't get a chance to call the hospital. And if they don't know exactly what's going on, that's a hard thing for them to do. So, I mean, unless they're being told by EMS what it is, I mean, we can all try to do it, and I can remind them, hey, when you guys get a free second, try to call. But if they, I mean, basically, they can send them the patient information, but they're not gonna, my dispatch is not gonna know what the medical problem is. They are. I mean, they're getting initial stuff, but sometimes the stuff we get and what's actually happening, they're they're way different.
So who's supposed to let the hospital know what's coming in?
So primarily it's an EMS problem. I'll say that up front. The only way that's being an EMD, emergency medical dispatch, would help in this scenario is to give a pre-report. But keep in mind, if the ambulance is staffed like it should be and we're on top of things, we're usually on scene to the patient within 5 minutes. Sometimes we beat the dispatcher getting the information from the patient. They tone it out while they're still receiving information from the patient. We're already in contact with that patient by the time they can get all the information in CAD and actually set up the dispatching program to run for us. And after that, after they have that free time, they might be able to call a hospital and say, hey, we got a patient that called with a complaint of X, but that report is only going to be as good as what the caller gives them. So if they say, hey, I just come across a guy in a ditch and he's unconscious, that's all the hospital's going to get, and all they know is probably what they heard over the dispatch in that case is what dispatch is going to report, that there's a gentleman passed out in a ditch, on 5th Street. And there was no need for that extra call. Now, if the person calling in is super detailed and says, yeah, my buddy Mo was, cutting a fish and accidentally cut off his arm somehow. Okay, maybe you get a little bit more detail. Maybe this person has a personal relationship with him where they can give helpful things to the hospital that you can't give over the radio, such as patient name, birth date, other identifiable information. You would
That
not
is
give
invaluable
over the
information
radio.
when we're waiting. I mean,
And
that you can't, I don't want you to dismiss that, personal identifiers.
Right.
It makes a difference. It's nice to
so,
know what's coming.
So do your EMS know to make those calls while they're
they
getting ready
do
to
their
roll?
best to, but again, sometimes there's only 2 people on and one person's giving care and the other's driving down the road. And if conditions aren't conducive to calling while you're driving, they might forsake calling and just show up.
So maybe the staffing, this backs up your staffing
Maybe
request.
getting more personnel, whether volunteer or paid, on scene is the way to go. But one thing that would be helpful, I see, and T touched on it briefly, is maybe if possible, we work with dispatch. If they do have identifiable patient information, calling when they do get a break, and that's, 5 to 10 minute time. If we're there in 5 minutes, we're usually on scene for at least 5 minutes. Dealing with actually what is wrong with the patient, whether we need to just pick them up and bring them into the ambulance and transport, or maybe they need care, then transport, depending on what the patient needs. There's usually at least a 5-minute window in which we're still figuring out what's going on, and maybe dispatch has the time to give, if they have a name and a birth date, at a minimum, they can pass that along if they have time.
Does-
No.
And
Just a radio channel.
Well, you can't give specific patient information like name, date of birth, even address in a small town, where you can identify who's living there is kind of iffy, because it goes into HIPAA. And there is a duty by everyone involved with call to protect patient, information. And that's on a federal level.
okay, in the military, you got a 9-line call that you start giving information out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Does EMS have a cheat card or something like that? So that when they start to roll, they can go down and just do like a pilot would as a check? We did
our standard run form. So I mean, all the boxes of all the information we're trying to.
And they're passing
find
that
out
information forward.
as best they can.
Okay,
So sometimes patients only coherent enough that you get a name and a date of birth. Sometimes you know who it is, but they can't actually tell you because for some reason they are altered mental status. Sometimes we just don't know who it is and have no one to help identify them if we've never seen the person before.
Okay.
So. But we'll try. We'll continue to make it a priority and see what we can work with the police and dispatch and see if we can come up with better alternatives.
yeah, I live and die by those little cheat cards when you're in a high stress situation. And, that's what we use, so, okay. Let's see, got that one. Service areas, board member Tassilo requests this discussion. Service
Yeah,
area.
we've had this discussion a lot, and I think we've already kind of moved around this a little bit about, having another service area because we're responding outside our service area frequently. I don't know what all the issues are. I know, somebody's taxes are gonna go up if they get encompassed in a city or a borough service area, to where they're actually tasked with fire and EMS service to provide care. Right now, it's kind of by the grace of God you go. And I know the police kind of have to change their hats from city to, state police status when you go outside or service area, I think. But I mean, I just think we need to start talking about, and I'm sure maybe at some level we already are, about expanding our service area or adding another service area, whether it's a 1 or a 2 or whatever, so that we can appropriately provide care, basically out to Papke's or so.
To touch on that briefly, is something that is near and dear to me because, right now, and if you read the borough charter, we are not supposed to provide any fire or EMS service outside service area 1. And it spells it as frankly as that. Cross this line, we will not pass. The volunteers, being good neighbors, actually want to help the people out there, and the people out there seemingly want our service because they continue to call. Just saying. But there's a couple of things you can do is either, and all these take a vote of the entire borough to do. So because you're changing charter in order to do it, you can either have them establish a service area of their own in which they have the option of choosing what services that they're paying for. It's probably the best and most straightforward option as far as I see it. Other borough officials such as Debbie could give a better recommendation. The second is we can expand service area 1 to incorporate some of those areas. People out there might balk because that's going to include services that they don't necessarily have control of voting what they pay for. They don't want to pay for the library or the pool or whatever bonding. If they expand service area 1, they really want to get a say because it's an expansion of service area 1. It's not choosing what services you get to choose, as I understand it. The third option is you can change the borough charter to allow fire and EMS service outside of service area 1. But that comes with other stipulations because we have to continue to man service area 1. As service area 1 is the one that pays for all the infrastructure that allows it to do it. And everyone within service area 1 gets something called an ISO rating on their property. And it changes depending on whether you're in a hydrant system or how close you are to a fire station. And, that's its own discussion. But if you, if you change, allow for services outside, you still have to plan on leaving some behind to make sure that service area 1's covered. With staffing, that kind of gets iffy because saying, yeah, we'll go, but only if we have enough people, which is kind of where we're at right now. So, it's a thought.
Well, like I said, I think these are things that the powers that be that we all enter to at this point need to actually start thinking about. Because we never think things are as close as they are, just like staffing changes up on the top of the hill. It's like, we were thinking 5, 10 years. Well, everything's kind of spinning faster and, every time we go out the road,
One of the sticky things is so I only have one water tender. So if I respond to a fire, say outside service area 1 at Packey's, and I get a call for another fire somewhere within service area 1 that requires the use of that water tender, I then have to make the tough choice of who gets the water. And based on my knowledge of reading and the theoreticals I've gone through is I'd have to pick up the tender and go to the call that's in service area 1, the ones who paid for the infrastructure. So you get halfway through a fire that you're fighting outside service area 1 and go, well, sorry, and go respond to that second fire.
That being new here. Has anybody, when they've talked about the second service area, has anybody ever said to them, that if you don't have a second service area, or if you're not part of service area 1, you don't get the fire department.
Oh, yes.
And so a lot of the knuckleheads that live around me just say that's okay.
Well, I'm not, I don't know, I'm sorry, but the truth is, what Aaron says is
Oh,
correct.
I know what you say, I know.
It is the people that are outside of service area 1 that need to decide, yes, we want a service area. They need to get together. What we do is we put together an election, they all vote. And if they vote positive, and say whatever services they want, then it can be so. But until then, it cannot.
And they already know this because they gotta put this on their insurance, on their
Yep.
houses, so.
Most of them just don't want to pay more taxes past service area 1. That's just the way it is.
Nobody's paying a lot of taxes in this state. I can
I-
tell you
yeah,
that coming
Yeah, we don't
from a
wanna
place,
pay
coming,
like
if,
New Jersey and.
wait, well,
those other
my
places.
house, our house, if we were in Connecticut, we would be paying $40,000 a year for taxes because we have a water view.
That's why you're living here.
One of the reasons. So when people go, I know our taxes went up last year, and, I said to my wife, I said, oh, our taxes went up. She goes, how much? It's like $100. And, and when we tell people back home, how much our taxes are, they go, I pay 3 times that a month for my taxes, or 4 times that a month for my taxes. And that's, I guess, the part that, I don't think you pay a lot of taxes here, I guess, because I'm new. Maybe if I
Right.
lived here longer, I would think that, my $1,000 a year was a lot of money.
They get to pay for all of that restrictions that they get. So, okay, move on. The last item for discussion is one I'm concerned about and probably not gonna be dealt with and complete tonight. But I'm curious as to, and I think the police and fire departments are probably the primary people to answer the question, is what is in place? It's probably a 2-part question. What's in place if supply chains are disrupted for fuel, food, medical, and that kind of stuff? We're in a unique position in the world right now where that could happen. So I kind of want to know what is there, or where can I go to find that information out? And the second part of the question would be, what can we do or recommend for our residents inside the borough total, disregard to their service area, but providing information in terms of emergency preparedness for the individual so they can self-rescue, so that they can eat for the next month while that supply chain is disrupted.
I'm going to put on my other hat. I'm also the emergency manager for the borough. So this has been part of my job to learn for the past year. So I'll start locally and then I'll go to other resources if that makes sense. So initially, if we have a supply incident, currently, we reestablished our local emergency planning board, our commission. Part of that is we invited some of our suppliers in town to be part of that to take part in a discussion for exactly this reason. So Hammer and Weekon's in there, we've invited Petro, AML's in there, so we can continue to stay in the loop as far as how, this type of infrastructure works and moves around. One of the good things I am glad to see is Hammer and Weekon is actually expanding its freezer service. That's all the construction you see up on the hill.
Right.
And they're providing generator backup to it so that it doesn't spoil if for some reason the power goes out. So they're locally, private business is working on expanding its current cache of supplies because they found during COVID, it became a big issue. And even with their warehouse completely stocked full, they didn't have a lot of backup. So we have, and it's on one of the sheets here, we have an emergency cache that we started setting up. Initially, it started Wrangell and Petersburg shared like emergency shelter equipment between the two cities. Once COVID happened and people started thinking about it, well, what happens if we both need it? Who gets it? Well, he who has gets. And so Wrangell, where it's normally stored, was probably going to get the majority of whatever shared equipment that was there, just by nature of they were housing it. So the borough saw fit to start acquiring small amounts of supplies. And through several grants, we worked up to about 100 beds, 105 cots with bedding for them, some general like hygiene products, as well as ability to distribute filtered water if there was a need to have to filter our own water. And then there was an individual who donated a bunch of freeze-dried food. I don't think we would ever have to use it, but it was a nice thought. And so all this sits in an emergency cache that's in a borough-owned building. I won't say where for protective purposes, but most people in the know where it's at. In the events that, we had a mass casualty and we had our event or somewhere where we needed a mass sheltering event, we have the ability to set up a shelter in the school gym. They have small generators that they can use to power lights. I am currently working on grant funding to get a generator. I actually priced one out. By the time install was done, you're looking at 600,000. But, if you can do it through grant funding, great. It's kind of a little side project of mine. It would power the school and the community center for purposes of making sure their lights and their heating systems remain intact and functional if for some reason our own power was not working. As far as fuel capacity in town, it would be what the fuel supplier has on store. Thankfully, they have some pretty large tanks and they can continue. I don't offhand know the actual capacity of their fuel supply, but I think they can get by for a week, week, 2 weeks without issue. Once you start getting out of the capability of the local suppliers, then the state has also been talking about this as well, especially in the southeast region where you have lots of little communities that you can't get to by road. And they have been working on a disbursement plan for supplies. They have been working on a disbursement plan for supplies amongst the various communities. And a lot of that information can be found from the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs. And in there, they have the teams that work on the state Emergency Operations Committee, or the SCOC. And they provide briefings and meetings yearly. So as far as getting additional supplies in town, I think we're good for a pretty, solid 2 weeks, easy. Once we get past that, the state would probably be stepping in and assisting us as well. FEMA has also been working with the state. They work with that department quite a bit. So I don't think we would be without, friends in the area to come help if for some reason us ourselves or us as a region, we're not able to get supplies in and out. They're going to fly stuff in. They're going to do it by barge if they have to, whether they have to man their own ships. I mean, they're working all these issues out. As far as information to be self-sustaining as a person, the LEPC actually has for a number of years had information that they could distribute to the public about emergency preparedness kits, and they break it down between 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 2 weeks. What you need to essentially self-sustain your home and family by yourself.
Is there any mechanism to make sure that everybody gets that information? Like right now, I don't have that information. I've not seen that information. I've been here over 3 years and haven't seen that. Debbie said that at one time that somebody came in and put on some sort of a class or seminar on self-sustainment and that kind of stuff.
That probably came from the state, that department I was telling you about. My predecessor is probably the one who arranged that, and they are more than happy to come and speak to communities on just that. In addition, we usually, anytime we have the volunteers out with manning a tent with information, that information is available there. I was actually just at the high school teaching I guess it was middle school, the 8th grade science class. They did it's called the Great Alaskan Shakeout. It's a earthquake tsunami drill statewide that the state put it on, the school signed up to be a part of it. They asked me to come in after and speak specifically to local emergency plans and then sheltering. That's another venue. We give the information out to the kids, let them take it home, give it to their parents, talk about it. So those are other venues, but we also have it just for handout up at the fire station. So, when we're out in public, we try and hand it out. You can come up to the fire station anytime. If it's not all that apparent, I can work on placing more of that information around town, like say at the assembly building here, our municipal building, or having it available at the PD as well, if they have a spot and they can hand it out.
Personally, I'd like to see some wheels put on this sooner rather than later, because I think that, getting that information out to the people and the community is a responsible thing for us to do. So that if a bunch of people here are self-reliant, there's a bunch of people that are not. And it would be nice if we could get some of that information and make it this is the first I've known about some of this. So I would like to see that either in the newspaper or poster. I don't know what the best venue is. I just think that a little bit of preparedness for the general population and might be a wake-up call if COVID didn't do it already, but it doesn't take much to turn the light switch off here.
So, and I don't know, Debbie, you could tell me, or Brian, you probably remember a number of years ago, maybe 10 now, there was a program based on like the emergency broadcasting where every week you added something to your survival cache. Jim, remember that? Like, it was like this week was batteries, this week was water, this week was, rice, this week was tarps. And it was on the radio. This week, it was dedicated to, that 1 hour a day or the 15 seconds a day or whatever it was. This week, this is what you're adding to your cache. And like I said, the emergency broadcast system was successful for a reason, because the only way people remember things is repetition. So if it's like your little bits and pieces and you're just constantly throwing out there, I don't know who did the program. I don't know if it was kind of self-contained or we were freewheeling it, but there was a template for that. And we could probably check with the radio station to see, where that came from, but that is the most effective way to kind of keep people's consciousness tuned into, I haven't checked the batteries in those smoke detectors in 7 years. The only way I knew they were bad is when I took the battery out because it was beeping. So, that's the way things usually do. They drift down instead of up. But like I said, that program, I think it was 14 weeks or 26 weeks. And every week it was dedicated to another survival item, as opposed to going out and trying to stock your closet one day, all at one time. And so, I'll get back with the newspaper or the radio station because Tom Abbott would have institutional knowledge to where that program came from. But I don't think it would be hard to resurrect that, especially if it's already taped or whatever, because that stuff doesn't change. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
but that was a really effective way to get information out and to keep it in people's brain.
That's exactly what I'm kind of bringing up, so I'm glad you brought that up. Just something that keeps that going. So, and right now, it just seems like this is a pretty good time to start that up. So I don't even know how to, whether we.
Like I said, I'll investigate with the radio station, see where that came from initially. Because they'll know. But I thought that was really, it was a good program. They didn't buy it for you. They just said like this week, it's,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right, we've been here quite a while. Is there,
Business? Unfinished business?
I think we are. That's why I'm saying,
Well,
well,
Just saying unfinished.
I
Oh,
can't hear you
unfinished.
over here.
oh,
Did you have something else, Stan?
Yes, I do. I got 4 items, but they won't take very long. The first item should be done tomorrow, should have been done yesterday. I like to drive around town, drive around, see what's going on, and I go out to the beach quite a bit. I refer to it as the Whale Beach. The city calls it Outlook Park. I walked out there 2 days ago and I grabbed the railing and I just about went over tea kettle into the rhododendron bush and flat on my face. The railing is like this and it needs to be taken care of, and I'm not kidding. I mean, now. The city's looking at $500,000 lawsuit if some idiot tourist or anybody else puts their hand on that railing and goes over and breaks something. It probably was a ballet dancer for some big outfit back in, and on the East Coast. And if she breaks a leg, we're in the hole. And this has not been, everybody looks at it and it wiggles. You all can go try it if you want. And I don't mean a couple 20-penny spikes or something driven in it just to tighten it up. I mean, it needs to be remanufactured and put together.
so is it borough property?
I can't
Is
hear
is
you.
it borough property?
Yeah.
Has the borough been notified by anybody, do you know of?
Well, I've complained to anybody that I've seen.
My
But I haven't,
recommendation,
but we're not talking
Stan.
something that couldn't have been done hello?
Hi, Stan. My recommendation would be to directly inform the Parks and Rec Director.
Well, I'm
Stephanie
informing
Payne.
you all, and you all ought to be talking about it down at the coffee shop, and it ought to be on the radio tonight.
We'll make it happen.
The doggone. I'm sorry, I lost part of my speech thing when I had a heart attack. And thinking. The switchboard at the city ought to be ringing off the hook to where it's ready to catch fire tomorrow about this. This isn't something that happened overnight. It's something that's been going on.
Okay.
But I've got several other things. Everybody knows about this by now, and yes, I will go bitch at Carl or whoever. But
Stan, I can pass along your concerns about Outlook Park tomorrow morning.
it needs to be done. All it takes is one person to go up there and fall and hurt themselves, and we're in the hole in our insurance for a whole bunch.
Thank you for bringing it forward.
It was brought to my attention, I think it's Ira Second Street that runs parallel to Haugen, is it up the hill, right? Okay. A person, a mother, but speaking because of the trailer court up there and so many trailers, and there seem to be a lot of kids in that area. And it seems that people are beginning to use, when they're coming down the hill, and there's maybe a lot of airport traffic coming down the hill if the plane was in, that they're beginning to use Ira Second Street to as a alternate route to using Haugen. Because there's no stop signs, there's no stops on Ira Second Street, which is what I was told. And I drove through there the other day and I didn't see any. I might have missed one, but we're talking from the corner of Eighth Street all the way down to the library. And that's a pretty much a straight shot. Well, when you go by the low income housing, that's a pretty much a straight shot all the way down there. People are using it as a alternate Haugen. And this concerned person said there are so many kids, and I've had kids run out of that trailer court on that one street, I don't remember which one it was, right in front of me. I've had them come out right in front of me going up the hill, check the mail, on a bicycle. And others run out in front of me that have happened. And I mean, I hit the binders, rolled down the window, and I was screaming at him. And of course, he didn't come toward me to get his whatever chewed out. He was gone. But that's just one example. And somebody, whoever, Public Works needs to look into, and I don't think that's a state road. Public Works needs to look into putting 2 or 3 stop signs on those cross streets. I used a lot of words. I hope you got it though.
I did, thank you.
And I got another one, at the corner of Harbor Way and the Wells Fargo parking lot is a ditch and it's pretty deep. And when there's snow, which is probably coming, right there at that corner there, and I brought this up before and for some reason it never got acted on. But there needs to be a sign right there at the corner of Wells Fargo parking lot. Cause if you, in the snow, whatever, you're gonna go into a ditch about that high. I've hit it myself. And I don't know that there's any, reason because of drainage or pipes or anything there could be. But somebody needs to look at putting a sign there that says, "Oh,"
Okay,
or whatever. Okay,
yep,
and what about with the snow?
sorry, hang on.
Good way to get rid of me. With snow probably coming, we're looking at snow removal or snow plowing on sidewalks. And there's a lot of people in town, or some people in town, have 4-wheelers with blades. And they have pretty well plowed the sidewalks off. And I personally think for the people that have used their own machines, and if you plow a lot of snow, you're gonna be doing work on your machine and it won't be cheap. I think the city ought to find some way to reimburse the people that have acted when there's a lot of snow with their machines to plow the sidewalks off. So particularly children going to school or old people doing whatever can walk more safely or less hazardly on the sidewalks. If the city could spot a few gallons of gas for snow plowing or whatever, but I think somebody ought to look into it, because the people that are plowing snow on the sidewalks are saving the city a lot of money, particularly in overtime, equipment, fuel.
Okay, I will pass that along.
You ready to throw me out?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you all.
All right,
I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Second.
Roger
With,
Hill, huh?
with an idea of like, we need to set another meeting. I don't want to go another year.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm sorry, I was out of
That's
town
okay.
for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm
so I
in
would
town.
say, I don't know, end of December, beginning of January, beginning of January.
Okay. That sounds like a plan, and then, if There's a motion on the floor. Everybody in favor of adjourning, stand up and leave.
Okay. 8:09 PM. Thank you.